Tales of Vesperia's Yuri Lowell is the definition of an anti-hero. Unlike most other Tales protagonists, and in contrast with his childhood friend Flynn, Yuri's actions certainly do not fit in with the typical moral code of a hero. From even before the beginning of the game, he is a criminal, and his automatic way of solving issues often falls on the side of vigilantism. However, even despite his vagabond style of living, Yuri is one of the most popular and dynamic Tales protagonists, not only within the fandom, but within the game itself. As such, a question might be raised. What makes Yuri so compelling as a protagonist, not only out with the game, but to the other characters? This video is going to go in depth about Yuri's actions throughout the game, so it will contain major spoilers for Tales of Vesperia. I would recommend giving it a play or a watch if you haven't already before watching this video. I hope you enjoy! As a protagonist, Yuri has the job of being the one to push the action forward by striving towards a tangible goal. We root for protagonists because they want something after all. Yuri in particular is a shining example of this, always having a tangible goal in mind aside from his subconscious desire to find purpose in life. For example, at the beginning of the game, his goal is to recover the Aquablastia for the lower quarter, and over the course of the game this develops until at the end his goal is to save the world. He is an active character, one whose personality and actions are spurred on due to his possessing two qualities: conviction and resolve.
Nothing shines quite so bright as a young person with something they're willing to risk their life for.
For somebody who stood on death's doorstep, saying you'll do something or die trying isn't just a figure of speech.
Huh? Death's doorstep?
Didn't you say you almost died during the Great War?
Huh. Forgot I mentioned that. Well, only the living have the privilege of saying they'll fight to the last breath. Words like conviction and resolve don't mean much to a dead man.
Though it can be said that all of the characters possess these qualities by the end of the game, Yuri is the most steadfast in them throughout the story. He has strong convictions, things he believes in deeply, morals which exemplify what he believes is right and wrong, what is just and unjust. It is because of these convictions that he has the resolve to act, to make judgments based on his beliefs, and to see his actions through to the bitter end, no matter what the consequences may be. For example, Yuri believes that it is wrong to steal from people who don't have enough to live on as it is. When the Aquablastia core is stolen then, it makes sense that he would be angry. The people he has grown up with, who he knows are struggling to live day to day, are having their livelihoods thrown into chaos by something which barely makes the residents of the royal quarter bat an eyelid. That is his conviction, to believe that Mordio, or Dedeki, is wrong for stealing the Aquablastia core. As someone who always acts on his convictions then, it makes sense that he would skip out on getting rid of the water in the lower quarter in order to take out the root of the problem, Dedeki. His resolve to recover the core leads to his quest, lasting a whole third of the game. The fact that he is still just as persistent in his attempt to retrieve the Aquablastia core by the time Barbos finally falls is only one signifier of how strong Yuri's resolve is. Of course, it cannot be forgotten that many of Yuri's convictions lead him to take criminal actions, thus turning him into a murderer, as he kills both Rigaud and Cumore in order to punish them. Not once does he regret this decision, however. Rather, Yuri takes the burden on his shoulders, knowing full well what the consequences may be.
The laws have always been the tools of whoever happens to hold all the chips.
Just saying that doesn't make it right for individuals to judge right from wrong, or for you to operate your own private court of law. If the laws are at fault, then fixing those laws comes first. It's for that very reason that I'm still with the Imperial Knights.
But you can't deny that lives were saved because those bastards were put down. You'd rather tell those people, sorry you have to die today, I promise we'll change things soon.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
They're out there, you know. People so bad they'll just go on hurting others. What can the average person do but be victimized by people like that? You know it was the same way with our people in the lower quarter.
Even so, Yuri, what you're doing isn't right. Do you intend to rain your justice down on all the villains of the world? That's the behavior of a common criminal.
I recognize it for what it is, and I've made my choices. Murder is a crime.
And even knowing that, you intend to dirty your hands.
Intend to? I already have.
Yuri is flawed. Even without his criminal record, he acts like a lone wolf, often taking his judgments too far and acting without consulting others first. And yet he embraces this fact as a part of his personality, though he does make changes over the course of the game to rely more on his companions, and to think not only of the effect his actions will have on those he cares about, but on the world as a whole. Yuri has strong conviction and resolve, and that is what makes him such a compelling protagonist to follow. Because he cannot leave things well enough alone, he becomes the sort of person the audience wants to see succeed. That being said, his conviction and resolve is also what makes him so compelling to the characters within the game. He is the catalyst for a lot of character arcs in Tales of Vesperia, something which is only made possible because he cares enough to spur change in other people. Let me walk you through a few examples. Perhaps the easiest example to explain is the development between Yuri and Carol. In the beginning, Yuri is everything Carol wants to be: strong, brave, cool, and dependable. Carol, on the other hand, is the opposite of these things, though he is at least strong enough to fight at the same level as your party when he joins. The reason for Carol's flaws, however, is his lack of resolve. Even if he believes firmly in what he thinks is right or wrong, he hasn't got the resolve to see his convictions through to the end. He becomes too scared and backs off, abandoning things he loves because he's afraid, or because he doesn't think he's good enough. To be fair, Carol is 12 years old. He has a lot of growing up left to do, but that doesn't mean Carol has nothing to offer to the other characters, and indeed, he manages to impart something to Yuri which becomes incredibly important for both of their developments as characters. A respect for Don Whitehorse, the man whose resolve helps Yuri to find his purpose in a guild, and whose death gives Carol the strength to find his own resolve.
I won't forget that attitude, boy.
And I won't forget your resolve, Don Whitehorse.
Don! Listen up. You all gotta stand on your own 2 feet from here on. There's a new age coming, so get out there and make it for yourselves.
It is the Don's words which kindled the flame of resolve in Carol's heart, but the spark comes from Yuri, who throws them back at Carol in his darkest hour. Yuri's anger is due to Carol faltering in his resolve, giving up on something he clearly cares about, and running away again instead of fully committing to the guild which he has worked so hard to create and maintain. When he yells at Carol, it is because he cares about Carol and wants him to find the resolve in himself that he so admires in the Dawn. And it is because Yuri cares enough to tell Carol this that Carol listens to Yuri and the Dawn, that he can stand up to join his guild once more, and that he can later prove himself to be the rightful boss of Brave Vesperia. An example that can more fully be attributed to Yuri is the arc concerning Estelle. She is born as many of the things which Yuri has grown up prejudiced against: a noblewoman with everything in the world and no understanding of the suffering of the lower class citizens in Zophius. That is not to say that Estelle has no capacity for sympathy. Rather, compassion is her greatest trait in the eyes of Bellius, and is what gives her the ability to change her views and to make changes in the world that others of her status don't bother to make. Her flaw comes in that she is still figuring out her convictions, and finding the resolve to stick with one decision at a time. Much of the beginning of Act 2 involves Estelle's indecisions in what she wants to do, and the conflict which arises from that within the party. And yet, it is not her indecision which aggravates Yuri the most.
Does death hold no fear for you, little one? For you gaze now into the mouth of death itself.
I am afraid, but I'm even more afraid of dying without knowing who I really am. Bellius told me I needed to meet you to learn about my destiny. I have to know just what that destiny is. I understand that I am a threat to the Entelikeia, but you said that I am a poison to this world. What is this power I have? Just who is the child of the full moon? If it is true that my existence cannot be tolerated, then it's okay if I have to die. But I at least deserve to know why it is I have to die.
It's okay if I have to die? What the hell was that?
I'm sorry.
I don't want to hear that again.
I'm sorry.
When Estelle says it is okay if she dies, Yuri is angry because she is throwing her life away for what he sees as nothing. If Estelle dies, it will not fix anything. Sure, it might prevent a small imbalance of air, but the biggest effect it will have is that it will erase one of the only good nobles that Yuri has ever known. Even if it stops the runaway heir, it will not stop Alexei, nor will it stop others from following in his footsteps. Her death would be a purposeless one, and the fact that she is okay with that is what Yuri is bothered by by the most. He does not appreciate martyrdom without a cause. That being said, hearing Estelle beg Yuri to kill her later on becomes tougher, knowing just how little Yuri wants for her to die, and thus it sets up Yuri's darkest moment, in which his conviction and resolve are tested the most. After all, it takes a lot of resolve to kill someone who has become so important to you as Estelle does to Yuri. In the end, it is Yuri's resolve to keep helping Estelle find her path in life that helps her to grow in her own convictions and resolve, thus becoming a princess who can make changes in the world without worrying whether she's doing the right thing or second-guessing herself too much. Similar to that situation is the one with Raven. From the beginning, Raven is a sketchy and untrustworthy character. Unbeknownst to the others, he often says things which point heavily to his true nature as Captain Schwann, a man under the thumb of the Commandant. And yet, despite his inevitable betrayal, Yuri still wants Raven to live, even though Raven has already chosen his own fate.
The end has finally arrived for me.
You never intended to leave this place alive.
Captain Schwann!
Who said you just get to lay down and die right here? Even if all your travels with us were just some joke to you. Are you trying to tell me your anger at the Dawn's death was just an act too? I thought the guilds never quit until the job was done. Wasn't that his dying wish? You go on living until the end.
Man, you really can be a downer sometimes, you know that?
Yuri sees the effect that Raven has had on their party, not only on himself but on Carol and Rita too, who are young and have clearly been influenced by the old man throughout their travels. Yuri can see how genuine Raven was when he was with them, how he had started to soften up to them by the time they arrived in the Egthor forest, where he spoke the words quoted at the start of the video. In a way, Raven was already beginning to find something he wanted to live for, which is part of the reason why he betrayed the party when he did, both because he wouldn't be able to complete his mission if he cared too much about the enemies of the Commandant, but also because the party's plans to rid the world of Glastia might put Raven's life in jeopardy too, due to the nature of his heart. Even if Raven has experienced death once already, just laying down and dying again because Alexei ordered it, and because on some level Raven wants it, is something Yuri cannot allow. Once again, he is dying without a cause, throwing his life away because he does not have the resolve to see it through to the end. That is why Raven's second death is more bearable, because it is not out of dejection, but out of necessity. Raven saves them from the collapse of Bacteon by sacrificing himself. Though Yuri obviously does not want Raven to die, at least this time he dies saving their lives, rather than for no reason at all. In that instance, Raven intended to give his life for something he cared about, which showed a stronger resolve and a conviction he held, the conviction that brought him to care for Yuri and the others. Of course, Raven doesn't die, and after that, Yuri makes sure that Raven can no longer throw his life away by swearing that it belongs to brave Vesperia now. By doing that, he insists that Raven holds a resolve to keep on living, something which Raven follows through with until the end. None of this is to say that Yuri only ever has an effect on his party members, or on people who already like him. In fact, one of the most interesting conflicts Yuri has is the one he has with Sodia. As a loyal knight, Sodia has convictions just as strong as Yuri or even her captain Flynn. That is likely why she admires Flynn so much, because he has strong convictions, and he believes in the same things that she does. However, her convictions contrast against Yuri's ones, and so they inevitably clash. Their true conflict arises when Sodia finally acts upon her growing hatred for Yuri and her belief that his attitude is affecting Flynn negatively. Yuri does not have a problem with Sodia stabbing him, rather he has gotten used to people hating him and attacking him at this point. He knows he is a criminal and a controversial figure, so it is no surprise that someone like Sodia would hate him as deeply as she does. The problem comes in that Sodia does not have the resolve to follow through in her actions to the very end. When she stabs Yuri, she does not think it through fully before doing it, and regrets her actions later on, since she is now a criminal on a similar level to him. Stabbing someone on a whim and regretting it later is ridiculous to Yuri. If you have not thought through the consequences of your choices fully, you should not go through with it. Or so Yuri believes. As such, when she comes to him requesting his help in saving Flynn in Hypeonia, Yuri is rightfully aggravated.
I tried to kill you!
Oh, I'm not letting it go. But I don't have time to deal with someone who gave up on everything.
I haven't given up.
No? So why haven't you gone to help Flynn, even alone? You wanted to protect him so badly you'd kill me. Why won't you protect him now?
I can't protect him by myself. Please, save him. Please.
You don't have to tell me to do that.
Please.
You know, there's one thing I agree with you on. I'm a criminal. I can be killed anytime. Flynn is the perfect knight. A perfect leader. He doesn't need a criminal by his side. I'm just standing in until the right person comes along.
Yuri.
Though Sodia has things she believes in strongly, she does not have the resolve to see her actions through until the end, or to try every last option she can before resorting to something she hates. Without that resolve, she is weak-willed. She will never make changes in the world if she will not try everything in her power that she can. Unfortunately, we do not see a true resolution to this arc with Sodia, though in the definitive edition there is a scene in which she acknowledges that Yuri is not entirely bad for Flynn, by encouraging Flynn to join the party in the final battle. Even so, her character changes thanks to Yuri's words, and she has the foundations to begin finding her own resolve after hearing them. Perhaps the most interesting example to think about is Yuri's relationship with Flynn. At one point, Yuri tells Estelle that Flynn is the only one he can trust. Having grown up with Flynn, this makes sense. They both have the same strength of wills and morals, of conviction and resolve. Even though their paths differ, with Flynn being the archetypical heroic knight, while Yuri acts in the shadows of vigilantism and guild laws, in the end they both have the same desire, to make people smile. All of the arguments they have throughout the game are either due to their differing convictions, with Yuri believing murder can be a just punishment while Flynn believes that crime cannot be solved by further crimes, or they are due to one of them faltering in their resolve. In Nordopolica especially, Yuri's anger at Flynn comes from a place of understanding that Flynn has been doing things he usually would not, and that Flynn's allegiance to Alexei contradicts the values Yuri knows that Flynn holds dear.
Just what the hell are you doing? Using the military to get control of the city? That's taking things a bit far. Maybe you're carrying out your duty, but you can't just go around doing everything by force.
Captain, awaiting orders.
I thought you were with the Knights to change things like that. I don't know why I'm the one who has to be saying this stuff. You know it full well yourself. Cat got your tongue? I mean, how's this any different from what I've come to expect from the Empire? Are you gonna follow Rago and Kumor's examples?
If I did, would you just kill me as well? Would you do away with me like you did Rago and Kumor?
Huh? What is he?
If you go and become a villain, you won't be giving me much choice.
Over the course of the game, they encourage each other to re-evaluate their convictions, to understand what they truly believe to be right and wrong. The definitive edition makes understanding Flynn's side of this even easier, as he battles to understand that the world cannot be separated into just black and white, and that people like Yuri cannot truly be called evil if their intentions were good. As the two characters who hold both strong conviction and resolve from the beginning, seeing them work to understand their beliefs more thoroughly makes their relationship all the more interesting, and their character arcs all the more compelling. Yuri Lowell is not a good guy. He doesn't abide by the laws, nor does he act in the name of what is righteous. Yuri acts based on his strong convictions, and he always has the resolve to see his actions through until the very end. It is these qualities which make him so compelling as a protagonist, and also so well respected by the others at the end of the game. After all, he has the resolve needed to make changes in the world that others, including those in power, are too afraid to make. His actions are in the name of justice and punishing the unjust, and that is what makes him a respectable leader, a true knight, and a good friend. But that's just my opinion. Whenever I play this game, I'm always blown away by how much I want to root for Yuri, even though murder is clearly wrong and I often disagree with his actions and the things he says. In the end, what I think matters most in storytelling is making your characters compelling for the audience, even when they act in a way which is conventionally seen as wrong. Besides, with everything I've said today about conviction and resolve, I'm barely scratching the surface of what makes Yuri interesting as a character. I've not even mentioned Yuri's personality and humour, which are also huge selling points for him, but I'm digressing. That's something for a different video. In any case, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on Yuri, especially since he can be such a divisive character, due not only to his course of action, but also because he doesn't get a lawful punishment for his crimes, even after multiple murders. I've said my piece here, so if you feel like commenting on anything I've said, or if you have any other thoughts regarding Yuri's character and what makes him so compelling, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, theories, and opinions. In case you missed it, I am currently uploading my Let's Play of Tales of Vesperia, the Definitive Edition. If you haven't already seen it and you are interested, I will pop a link in the description and in the corner. There will also be a link to my playlist for my other analysis videos, all of which are about Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Berseria currently, though I can't wait to make more Vesperia content in the future. Also linked there will be a playlist for my newest series, Can We Talk About?, in which I discuss the things that aren't big enough for a full analysis video, but are too spoilery to bring up in my Let's Play. I really enjoy making those videos, so I hope you enjoy watching them. In any case, I've kept you here too long now. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. I hope you have a great day, night, or whatever the time it is for you. And I will see you next time.